Welcome to tonight's Live Life Swift. Our webinar series continuing tonight with the amazing Karen Collicott as our guest. Just to share with you, the Swift program is all about living a life in balance, and I've got a forthcoming book and coaching program to come out all about helping business owners have a little bit more balance. And Swift is an acronym for social, work, inner, financial, taken care of. And when you live a day where you take care of all 5 areas of your life, boy, are you ever in the zone. And so we're going to be launching a book and a coaching program after this webinar series is complete. This webinar doesn't happen without the support of Kareem Abuda from Investors Group. He's one of our sponsors. There's Kareem. He's a good guy if you need financial planning help. He's the guy to go to. And Sujana Porter from Royal LePage Connect Realty and Ajax. She's also one of our sponsor partners. And I know she has a previous commitment tonight. So she's a busy woman, a very busy real estate agent, truthfully, because she's good. So our guest tonight is Karen Collicott. And Karen's a money coach and strategist, and she helps entrepreneurs. I got to go back. She helps entrepreneurs. I'm just having trouble with my screen. There we go. Build the bridge between their businesses and their personal finances, creating more revenue and more choices. Karen's a certified financial planner. She's a certified money coach. She's also a certified NLP practitioner. And Karen blends pragmatic money management strategies with tools to change what you tell yourself about the green stuff. Karen's been featured featured as a personal finance expert in the Globe and Mail, CBC Radio, Money Sense Magazine, Chatelaine, the Toronto Star, creditcard.ca, Rogers TV, and numerous online radio and blogs. With her straightforward strategies and tell-it-like-it-is approach, Karen delivers a fresh perspective on your money life, which is really important these days. That's the F part in the Swift, the financial. You have to take care of your financial self and health if you're going to live a good, balanced life and have the things you want and need. In this lively, informative talk tonight, Karen and I are going to really unveil some truths about money that are going to that could be stopping you from success. It could be stopping you from a lot of things happening in your life. And she's going to share a new approach to money in your business, and we'll introduce some creative ways to fund growth in your business without going into debt. And there she is. Nice picture, Karen. I like that.
David, I'm so pleased to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled you are here tonight. You know, we think about money every day. You know, like I don't know if there's a minute, you know, in the day that we don't think about money, right? You know, it's the things we buy, we think about money. We look at our bank account, we think about money. We think about, man, am I earning enough? If you're a business owner, am I making enough? You know, or what are my cash flow projections? What are my sales going to be this quarter? What are my expenses? Can I afford this? You know, my marketing plans, and you know, can I afford to take my clients out for Christmas dinner? I mean, people are starting to think like that this time of year. So it really does permeate our thoughts, and it governs day-to-day buying decisions. And truthfully, it stresses us out when that big bill comes in that we really weren't counting on. So my question to you is, how can we begin to manage those daily thoughts and conversations that we have about money that's going to help us you know, maybe ditch that, you know, the lack mindset that we have? You know, how do we do that?
It's a really good question and a good point, David, because you know, money isn't the most important thing in our life, but it does touch everything that is important, and it becomes, especially when it's feeling like it's not working very well, it can become an overrider of everything that's going on in your life. So there are some simple things that you can do to start to shift your sort of how you're feeling about it. And, you know, I'm going to sort of pepper them through the conversation today, but I'll give you a couple of starter ones for people to really just, I do want to say, like, grab a pen and paper. I'm going to give you a bunch of stuff today, and you want to make sure that you make some notes. So one of the things that I really want to encourage people to do is to actually acknowledge how good you actually have it. Because there's a real tendency to get down in the dumps about how things aren't working and how you don't have the money and all of that. But the reality is we're pretty wealthy here in Canada and in North America, and we have a lot of choices. And so part of the problem with our money is that there are so many choices that it feels like we can't have all the things that we want. So one of the best places to get out of the lacking mentality is to actually go into gratitude. So start to acknowledge, what do you have going for you now? What's working? When you get money in, celebrate it. We don't do that, especially as small business owners. We go, oh, well, I was supposed to do that. Right? But no, when it comes in, go, woohoo, I got a new client. They're paying me. So, my client from last month paid me again. You got to celebrate it and really acknowledge it when it comes into your life. That's really important.
All right, I like that. I like the idea of gratitude, and and the other thing too. You mentioned that we got to give thanks to being in this country, and we do. And one of we were talking before, we started here tonight with this webinar about newsletters and blogs and things like that. And one of the newsletters I put out every year, it's the Canada Day edition, are the list of 12 to 15, actually hit 20 this year, 20 things to do in the city or the GTA for free in the summer. From a movie in the park to nature trails to renting a bike to free concerts. There's so much to do for free. And I think, you're right, there is abundance around us. We just have to kind of look for it and think a little bit differently. And there are things that you can do that can entertain you, for example, for relatively no cost. A couple of things I know, that I'm going to be doing this fall is going to some TV show tapings. It's free,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done that before. It's great. We've gone to see Rick Mercer. We've gone to see, it's great. Yeah, they're free. They're a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we have so many things that we can do to look after ourselves that aren't expensive. And it's easy to forget when it feels like everybody around us are going on fancy holidays.
Right.
I can't tell you how many of my clients say, how come my friends can go on blah, blah? And I'm like, well, what's the likelihood that they're doing it on credit?
Right. You don't know somebody else's bank account.
Exactly.
What are some unhealthy mindsets and money conversations that you see in some of your clients?
It's interesting. One is this what I call the myth of entitlement. So the myth of entitlement basically says that we should be able to afford a nice life, and that sort of life that you imagine. And the reality is that most of us, our expectations are beyond what our budget is. And, of course, we have a huge influence from, the media and from the manufacturers and so on telling us how we have to have all this stuff. But there is this sense of entitlement where we're supposed to have this nice life. I have a lot of clients that come to me when they first start working with me and say, we make good money. We should be able to have a nice life, and we don't have an extravagant life. But when we look at their numbers, they're actually spending more than they're making, which actually by definition does mean that they're living an extravagant life. And so it's a matter of looking at one of the big pieces is, are you living in this sort of sense of entitlement? The other side of that is that there's sort of a cultural expectation that what I call the myth of more. So there's this overriding message in our culture that says, in order to be happy, we must have more. And it doesn't really matter what it is more of. More money, more time, more love, more food, more attention, more booze, more, entertainment. It just, like, the whole structure of our society is, in order to be happy, you have to have more. And the problem with more is there's no end point for more. Right? Like, more doesn't end. You never get to the, success of more.
Yeah, so it's
So
like, when's enough enough?
Well, exactly. So being able to shift, when you can start to recognize that the cultural expectation is that you're always driving for more, then you can start to invite yourself and your family and your business partner or whatever to start to look at what is enough. And being able to shift from more to enough is allows you to actually have an opportunity to meet that goal.
So what are some more life-affirming positive thoughts about money that we can really start to use and embrace and replace those negative stories and thoughts, Karen?
So one of the things that I really like, and obviously I'm a big fan of celebrating. I don't think we do enough of it. I think that our expectations of how life is supposed to be and what we're supposed to do, all the shoulds, can override the opportunity to really celebrate when you have a success. So start celebrating small successes. Start really recognizing when you're making small successes in revenue generation, in making great decisions around spending, and start using some language. So one of my coaches said to me at one point, she says, when you get a sale and you get that money come in, don't just go, oh, thanks, that's lovely, or I was supposed to do that, or, whatever. But you go, no, like, woohoo, and more of that, please. Because a lot of it's setting that intention to create the flow of money into your life. And so, and regardless of what your belief system is, if you believe in the idea that what you focus on expands, and whether you do it through energetic or religious or spiritual or any of those, I think most people I talk to kind of wrap their head around that, the idea that if you're paying attention to something, it tends to, you tend to get more of it in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You want to pay attention to your money because you want more of it in your life. And most of us are ignoring it. So celebrating it, more of that, please, and then really starting to acknowledge your possibilities. So one of the statements, the sort of affirmations that I really like is, I'm a generous giver and an excellent receiver.
Right.
That, right? Because think about it for a second. We're all very proud of being good givers. That's part of our culture, is that we're supposed to be good givers. But nobody really teaches us to be excellent receivers. In fact, you're not really supposed to be an excellent receiver, right? Because it's not very, maybe it's too, not modest enough or whatever. But the reality is, if you're inviting money into your life, but then you can't receive it, you have to be able to make it and hold it, and then ideally send it back out for somebody else to make and hold.
Mm-hmm.
So that idea of, I'm a generous giver and an excellent receiver.
It's flow.
Yeah.
And once we, lock up the flow, then nothing happens.
Well, exactly.
Right?
And then
There's restriction.
So use that one, and then on top of it, you want to add, my capacity to earn, hold, and grow money expands day by day.
So you're a believer of positive affirmations every day then?
I am, and I'll tell you why. We're so good at saying all the horrible things to ourselves.
Oh yeah, I don't have enough. I can't do this.
Exactly.
I'm a loser. I should be charging more.
Exactly.
I get that too. Like, because you compare your notes with other coaches, and they go, "Oh wow, you're only charging that? That's not enough."
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
right?
wow. You're obviously not good enough. And it's like, yeah, but when I get paid the $50 to teach women that are at risk, I love the work and I love the impact I have on them. Like, that brings me more joy. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I'm so glad you said that, David. Let me tell you something that one of my colleagues teaches. He talks about the different kinds of currency. And I talk a lot about time, money, and energy because those are the three main currencies that we have available to us. Time,
And
money,
we don't
and
have
energy.
enough of a lot of times.
Well, yeah, or we think we don't.
Yeah.
And my friend David talks about the different kinds of currencies that you have, and sometimes currency is the choice, for example, to work less so that you have time for your family. That's a very specific currency. Being able to choose to teach women at risk in order to help them, the currency for yourself is your time and money, and the currency that you're giving out is that impact. And maybe it's a different kind of exchange. And so I invite people to start to look at what kind of currencies are you using. Look at how you're spending your time, money, and energy, because it's not just about money.
Yeah, and that's a big thing for a lot of people. It's not just about money. It's funny, I speak to my sister and I'll tell her, oh, I'm really busy, and she'll always ask, well, are you making money? Drives me nuts. I got to note to self. I have to ask her to stop asking that.
Well, yeah, and invite her to, look at, how that, really how that impacts on her.
Yeah.
Right? Because it impacts on her sort of, field of influence as well, right? If it's all about the money, what else are you doing that is impacting on the world? And don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of making money.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like,
Sure.
I'm a big fan of it. That's a lot of what I do is help people figure out, how to generate the revenue in their business, how to keep it in their household, how to pay themselves regularly, how to make their money actually work for them. And our cultural sort of obsession with more is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. And it leads to a lot of unhappiness and even depression and, and even sort of a lack of self-esteem.
It really does. And, one of the reasons that I recognize it so well is, I'm very fortunate. I grew up in a really lovely family. My parents are wonderful. My sisters and I get along. I really, sort of had one of those, storybook families. And so, that I feel very blessed for that. And, my parents are really great and so on. One of the lessons that I learned from my family, from my parents, was that I could do anything, right? I sort of grew up in that kind of, in the 70s with, young girls in the 70s, you can do anything. You're not restricted the way that, our parents were, certainly our mothers were. And what happened for me, and of course this wasn't what the lesson was intended to be, but what happened for me was that the message that I received was, you can do anything, so you should be able to do everything. And so I started living in this sort of idea of more in what I'm doing in my life and in my job and in my, so there was never any line in the sand that says I had met success, because I always had to do more. And when I started to recognize that, then I started to see how the same thing was happening with my clients around money.
So you transforming your own self, your own thoughts, your own patterns, actually had a multiplying effect on your clients.
Absolutely, because I can really recognize it. And of course, we all live in this world of more, right? There's stuff that I want as well. But when you start to see how the myths work and see how they undermine what you really, really want, then you can start to see where you can start to create that line in the sand for yourself of looking at, well, how much is enough, right? When do we hit success?
So what's your new model then for, success and enough?
Well, I set very specific goals, and I set goals that I have a sort of big picture that I want to achieve, but I set very specific goals that have, they're SMART goals, right? We all know the idea of SMART. They're specific and measurable and
attainable.
Attainable and all those things.
Yeah, realistic and timely. Yeah.
Exactly. So I know when I've hit them. And by doing that, that allows me to then celebrate that success. And then I might still want to do more, and that's fine. But I would set it as a new goal so that I know that I've achieved it and I can go through that completion of celebrating that success.
So do you
And we don't do that with our money.
right. So do you set with money then? Do you set little goals along the way, and then
Yes.
but you still have your big picture, vision, right?
Sure, sure. So this is a really good way to deal with debt repayment. Because
Right.
people look at it and go, oh my gosh, I owe $40,000 in credit, and I'm like, ah, and it just feels so huge, like you're never going to be able to deal with it. But if you look at it and say, okay, well, I have one credit card that's $2,300. Okay, what is it going to take? Let's just pay the minimum on everything else, and I'm going to pay this $2,300 off as fast as I can. Great. Success. Now I've got one credit card at zero. Let's look at the next one. Right? This is the same thing that people can do, and they can do it with saving, they can do it with debt repayment, and they can do it in the way that they're building their business as well.
So you
Small goal.
talked about your story and your patterning, and where do these beliefs and thought patterns come from? Is it from our childhood? And
Absolutely.
yeah,
So from 0 to 7 is what is called the imprint stage. And in that imprint stage, we receive all kinds of information, of course, from our parents and our culture and our community. Of course, the younger you are, that's usually the people closest to you. And we have these little teeny brains, right? And we don't have all the resources that we will as adults. And so we see things happening around us, and we decide as little kids how the world works. And so, you might have what my friend calls the top of the stairs conversation, right? You get up in the middle of the night and you're 6 and you go to the top of the stairs because you want a glass of water and you hear mom and dad fighting about money. And you decide that money is bad.
right.
Because you're 6, right? And so, and that, unfortunately, those decisions that we made, unless there's some way that some process that we go through as an adult to shift that decision and make a new decision, we often are running these patterns, these beliefs from when we're very little kids into our adulthood.
So how do we deprogram that? Because years of conditioning and beliefs, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's our beliefs, and the thing is that, so 0 to 7 is imprint, and then 7 to 14 is modeling. So I just want to point this out, is from 7 to 14, we're looking around at what everybody else is doing, and we're modeling other people's behavior. So if you have an older sister, like I did, who got a credit card at 16, and I was 12, and I watched what she did, and, so I could have gone one way or the other. I could have followed her path and ended up, with fighting with the, with the credit, or I could have gone the other way. This sort of, you kind of find your path based on what you're seeing around you. So yeah, you can do deprogramming in a bunch of ways. You can create new decisions and new beliefs. You can do that through really through making some new decisions for yourself, and I'll talk a little bit about that. There's, when you were doing my introduction, you talked about, you mentioned that I'm a certified NLP practitioner, and NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, so it talks about how we use language to create the pictures in our head about the way the world works.
Right.
And so through some of the techniques I use in that, I can actually help people change those decisions that they made when they were kids. And that's really exciting because it actually can change in a moment the whole way they see money.
All right. So give you a case study, okay? This is a true story. There's a fellow who, as an adult, would make a lot of money. And when he made a lot of money, he also got really violently sick. And then he lost it. And then he made it again, and he got sick again. And they traced it back to the time when he was a kid growing up, and his mom would make chocolate cake with pennies and dimes in it. Remember, like the odd parent would do that? And I think he accidentally swallowed the cake with the pennies or the dimes, and he got sick. So he equated money or having money with getting sick.
Yeah, so when he receives money, he gets sick, and
Yes.
that's in his unconscious mind. And so until he chooses a new decision, then he'll continue to run that pattern.
So from an NLP, neuro-linguistic programming point of view,
Yeah.
how would you get him to deprogram that aspect of himself and choose and begin to live a new reality?
So the unconscious mind will actually do it for him if he's, given the opportunity and walked through the process. So there's a couple of different techniques that we could use. Basically, what we want to do is, the unconscious mind sort of takes these things that happen that we're not able to deal with because we don't have the resources at that moment, and it sort of pushes it down into the unconscious mind and puts a sticky note on it and says, I'm going to come back and deal with you later when I can handle you. And so the work that we do through NLP is really inviting your unconscious mind to take that sticky note off, let that memory come up, and with the new resources, be able to process that and say, okay, good, we're good on that one. And in fact, it can be where that person, you could tell them that that's what they had believed before, and it's almost like they can't even remember believing it. It's really quite interesting. Like our unconscious mind is very powerful, and it's unconscious, right? Like we don't have a lot of conscious control over it. So, being able to help somebody access it, and you don't have to live through the thing again, which is, you don't even have to know all the details of it, which is cool because your unconscious mind knows.
Right.
So that all sounds, maybe a little bit woo-woo for some people, but the reality is it's all based in the neuroscience. Like it's all based in the way that we're wired electronically in our brains and our body. And our body holds all of our memories.
Right. Wow. So it's easier than we think to let go.
It is easier than we think, yeah. And so let me just talk a little bit about making a new decision because, you don't, for somebody who's got that kind of response, I think he's going to want some assistance, right?
Oh, yeah.
For many of us, we have these limiting decisions or limiting beliefs that we have that, and again, we can use NLP to be able to help you release them. But sometimes it's a matter of making a new decision. So a belief is a decision that was made, and then the evidence, basically, like you make a decision, something happens, you make a decision about the way the world works, and then you spend the next, whatever, weeks, years, decades, looking for evidence to support that decision. That's all a belief is. It's not something written on a big scroll somewhere. It's a decision that we made that we now look for the belief, or the evidence to support.
Right.
Because the reality is, you could go and look for evidence to support the opposite.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example, right? Somebody will say, well, all rich people are greedy. Right? This is, pretty common belief. All rich people are greedy, all of them, right? And so
you mean it's not true?
You can find evidence of that. For sure, you can find evidence of really greedy rich people.
Sure.
But you can also find evidence of incredibly generous rich people, like incredibly generous. Think about the kinds of foundations and gifting that is done by people who have, a lot of money. And so it's sometimes, if you can start to recognize where that limiting decision is, then you can start to look for new evidence.
Gotcha. What about dealing with guilt, shame, and even cultural patterning? Like the man should pay for everything. And if he doesn't, then he's a little typo here, he's a no-good bum. I mean, that's a little over the top, but I think that mindset and thinking does exist,
Yeah, there is certainly cultural patterning that happens and expectations, and I think it's one of the challenges specifically in the last probably 30 years as, the way that we are making money in our families has changed. Women are, bringing in many families as much or sometimes more as their partner. And so I think that as those dynamics have shifted, some of the cultural patterns have really sort of come up as a problem. So that's sort of one piece. Shame and guilt it's a huge challenge around money. There's a lot of what I call shame and blame. And especially when there's a partnership, like a marriage, spouses, or business partners, there can be a lot of shame and blame around the money. One of the things that I particularly love about working with couples is being able to take some of that energy, that emotion off of the table. And the way we do that is by starting to talk about it. And it doesn't have to be a big, spill your guts session, but it's a matter of starting to look at what do you want, where are you, what do you want, and where's the gap? Because if you start to acknowledge sort of where you're at and what you want, and then start to take action, a lot of the guilt and the shame comes from inaction.
Right.
From not doing what you know that you should be doing, but maybe you don't know how. Maybe you feel, I think a lot of people feel, a lot of my clients are, successful, well-educated people that just don't know. They just don't know. Nobody ever taught them how to do money. And so they feel incredibly embarrassed.
Yeah, we didn't learn it in school.
No, and, for a lot of our parents didn't know, and so we just didn't learn. And so there's a lot of embarrassment, a lot of shame and guilt, and it's still that one area that we just don't talk about.
Right. And is it me, I don't know if this is a belief, but my sense is that to live in this day and age tends to cost a lot more than than it used to. And so, there is often more, more month at the end of the money.
Yeah, it's, it's interesting because I think that it's always been that, I think that it's felt like there's, everyone always says, oh, it's more expensive now than it was before. However, there are things that are added to a family budget that have become needs that were wants or didn't exist not that long ago. Mm-hmm. So just think for a moment about your technology budget. Like in my family, we have cable internet, cell phone, landline, and we pay $230 a month, right? It's not insignificant. We did not pay that money a few years ago. We might have paid $60 for a landline.
Right. My insurance is
with long distance.
Yeah,
put the timer on for because it costs a lot of money.
Yeah, my insurance is $750 a month.
Well, exactly.
I don't see that. I don't see it back.
No. So there's areas that have increased for sure. There's also, again, the expectation. One of the things that I think is really interesting is it used to be when we were kids, when I was a kid, going on a holiday was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And going on a plane, going on a plane was huge, right?
Yeah,
you were take your whole family somewhere.
Yeah, you were living the good life if you were going.
Well, yeah. And now people are getting their panties in a twist if they haven't gone away 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Right? So our expectations have changed as well.
So,
and, if you live in a big city, the cost of living is higher. If you live alone, your cost of living is higher, right? So, there's all of those things as well.
So you have to make some real tough decisions about your life and what you want and out of it. Because I remember 3 years ago, I had a job. I was working full time with an organization. And, the gross pay was about, it wasn't bad. It wasn't great, truthfully, actually. It was about $46,000, but the net pay was like $26,000. And truthfully, at the end of the month, it was like, ugh.
Yeah.
It felt like a Peggy Lee song. Is that all there is? Right.
It's true. It's true. And then you add on top of that living in a, probably one of the most expensive cities in the country. It ends up being a challenge for sure.
So how do you coach your clients in that situation?
So there's basically a couple of things that we do. The first thing is we get crystal clear on what does it actually cost to run your life. Because the reality is that most people don't know. Very, very few of my clients have come to me having a really good idea of what their life costs. They can tell me mostly what it costs to run a month But the reality is we have a lot of stuff that doesn't happen every month, right? You might pay your insurance annually. You might pay your taxes 4 times a year. You've got gifts that come here, there, and everywhere. You know, maybe you ski in the winter, but you don't do in the summer, right? So there's all these things that happen. You know, your car breaks down, but, you know, it's not on the schedule. But we know that these things happen. We don't plan for them. So getting crystal clear on how much does it actually cost you to run your life. So take the annual amount and divide it by 12. That's what you actually cost you monthly, not just what your bills are and your groceries are for the month. And then get crystal clear on what you want. So, you know, here's what it costs me to run my life. Here's the life I want. Is there a gap? And if there is, how are we going to fill that gap? Because what most people are doing is they're filling that gap with credit.
Yeah.
And so if that's not what you want to do, which for most people it's not what they want to do.
Well, it's a vicious circle.
Well, it is. It is. And so you want to start to say, okay, well, here's what it costs me to live my life right now. Here's what I want. And, you know, here's the gap. And maybe it costs you more than what you're making right now. So being able to, you know, I really walk my clients through a process of really getting clear on what the current situation is, what they want, and then how to start to move. I call it getting to zero. So how do we get them to zero so their money coming in and their money going out equals?
But that's uncomfortable for a lot of people. That's work. That's sacrifice. Yep. And so a lot of us have the mentality of entitlement, or well, we deserve this. Like, we work hard enough. Like, to heck with it, you know. I'll have fun today and I'll worry about it tomorrow mentality. Tell me something. First of all, you know, what's your feeling on that? Like, and how do you get your clients to move away from the, well, I'll have fun today and I'll worry tomorrow kind of attitude? And that, what's the, can you share what the feeling and emotion was like for somebody who actually went the tough route and had to work through it and work to get there, and what was the feeling when they got to their goals?
Sure. So, you know, there certainly is that feeling of, you know, like sometimes I know we all feel like little kids wanting to stomp our feet and say, but I don't wanna.
I know, and
right?
I deserve a treat. I deserve that ice cream.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I talk about, you know, I deserve it as one of the unconscious money patterns that we run, because we do. We run that all the time. Oh, I deserve it, right? And I'm not standing up on some pedestal here, because I do it all the time. I'm a huge, you know, I deserve it with small stuff like Starbucks. I'm like, oh, I just want a latte. Oh, $5 later, right?
Yeah.
So I get it, and it's, you know, I certainly am, like I said, I'm not, I haven't got it all perfect on my end either, because we all have that. And if you, basically the way I look at it with my clients is I say, listen, let's get really clear on what you want. Because we spend all kinds of money on stuff that we don't care about. And in fact, half the time we don't even want, because we don't have a compelling reason not to. Okay, I'm going to say that again, because that is probably the most important thing you'll hear tonight, is to recognize that we spend all kinds of money on stuff that we don't even want, we don't care about, because we don't have a compelling reason not to.
Yeah.
So if you want to change your money life, you need a compelling reason. It's the only reason why you'll make a different step, a different choice in your money life. So that's the way I do it with my clients, is we get really clear on what they want. What are your goals? What are your values? What's important to you? And then we start to match their money to their goals. Because it's not so hard to give up the pizza every weekend if you know that that money is getting put into the travel account to take your kids to Disney.
Got you. So there's a reward or a game or a big something to look forward to after.
Well, yeah, and you start to direct the money, and sometimes, you know, like certainly I'm a huge fan. So let me back up. Many of the sort of budget experts that are out there really have a scarcity mentality. They're all about cutting back, cutting back, cutting back. You can't have this, you can't have that. There's not enough. You gotta sort of take what you can get. And I just don't believe that. Particularly because I do a lot of work with entrepreneurs who have the capacity to go and make more money.
Right.
And even people who have a traditional job, there's so many choices that we have. And so what I want to do with people is help them create the life that they want within the context of what they've got. And so I really work on a prosperity mentality. It's like, okay, let's figure out what you want and let's figure out how to get there. And are you willing to give up some of the things that aren't very important to get the stuff that is really important?
Gotcha.
We all are, if push comes to shove, we'll give up stuff. I know, I've seen it with parents all the time. They'll give up stuff for themselves to give it to their kids.
Right.
So you need that kind of compelling story for yourself. And you can't just go into what I call debt fatigue, where everything goes to paying the debt, because you're just going to end up going off the deep end and going into reward splurge, where you're like, I can't do it anymore. Let's go to Dominican.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but being able to create a system and create structure so that you can match your money to your goals, that's what I do with my clients, is to create that so it doesn't feel, I don't know if I've answered your question. Let me answer
but you also,
part of it.
yeah, what I also sense from you in our conversation tonight is that you do a little bit of hand-holding as you walk
Yes.
people through some uncomfortable situations.
Oh,
The
yes.
uncomfortableness of saying no, of being on a budget, of watching, what comes in and what goes out, and doing, and trying to make that somehow fun and rewarding at the same time. That's
The
what
cool thing is, David, I have to tell you that almost every one of my clients says to me, I thought this was going to be really awful, but it's really fun.
Cool.
And every time I just sort of wait, it usually happens around, we've been working together for a couple months and they're starting to get the system working and they're seeing how their money's moving and they're not feeling the stress anymore or not as much because they're starting to see how the system's working and they're like, oh my God, this is fun. Because they're starting to make friends with their money.
Yeah, and that's really important. And they're starting to love money, and when not that you should love your money, but I think it's all reflected in self too. Love yourself, love everything about your life.
Well, and have a relationship with it, right?
Yeah.
This is a pretty big part of your life.
Oh,
and,
well, it's everything sometimes.
Well, it like I said at the beginning, it impacts every single part of our life. And when you're in that ignore and panic cycle, it's really uncomfortable. And the fact of the matter is, it will continue to be a problem until you start to pay some attention to it.
What about the idea of like a weekly money conversation with your partner, or taking like a Sunday night just to look at the bills, pay the bills, that kind of
Yep.
thing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I talk to my clients a lot about creating a money spot and having a regular money meeting. And so you'll notice on my Facebook posts, every once in a while I have a few clients that'll post on Mondays, just finished Mondays.
Oh, cool.
I've got a bunch of people that all do their money stuff on Mondays.
Yeah.
And so Money Monday, Financial Friday, Wealthy Wednesday, it doesn't matter when it is, but you want that consistency. And I'll tell you why. We have created what in NLP we call an anchor, right? We sort of have anchored into ourselves that anytime we talk about money, it's a problem, right? Because that's all the only time we ever look at it when we're in the ignore panic cycle, right? We ignore it till there's a problem, and then we have to deal with it, and then we ignore it again until there's another problem. And so we've got this anchored in that that money is a problem. And when we talk about money, we're going to fight, and we're going to feel sad or upset or scared. And so when you start doing money regularly, then you get to start to teach yourself that money can be neutral, money can be positive, right? Because if you're going to do it regularly, then it just is what it is in that moment. as opposed to only being a crisis.
Gotcha. You know, I remember interviewing author Michael Gerber, the author of The E-Myth, on my radio show back when I first started it. And we talked about money, you know, and the entrepreneur. And I have a few questions here on the slide I want to talk to you about, too. And he said something really profound, and it stayed with me. And it actually had me drop my money conversation. And he said that nobody ever has enough money. Whether you're rich or not, none of us have enough money. And I went, yeah, he's right. So what am I complaining about? and my money issues started to go away. Because it's like, well, nobody has enough. We never really have enough. Sometimes, you know, it's like that, you know, what we talked about at the beginning. When's enough enough? Well, sometimes it's never enough. We always want more.
For sure. David, I just need to interrupt you for 2 seconds. For some reason, go to webinars saying I'm leaving the webinar. If I disappear,
yeah.
Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you're fine.
Excellent.
We got about
oh, it's kicking me out.
10 minutes left. So I got a couple of things I still want to get to. You know, a lot of us on the call tonight, you know, we're self-employed, and you know, one way to earn money is to increase your client base, right? Or charge more, or sell more, or get your clients to come in more often. How do you coach your clients who, you know, they're out there, they're trying to make things happen, they're making the calls, they're getting meetings, but they're coming up empty?
First thing to do is take a look at where you're not in alignment with your own money. So where are you late on a bill? Where have you not made arrangements to pay? Where have you, have you spent any time looking at your money lately? Because the reality is, you know, again, if it's money flow. And so if you've stopped the flow on your own side because you're not moving it in your own world, then it's hard for more money to come in.
Okay.
And again, it's, sort of the energetic world. You can decide whether you want to buy into that or not. But if you can wrap your head around it or embrace it entirely, depending on where you are on the spectrum, a really good way to get the money flow going again is to make a donation.
Right.
And it can be time, money, or energy. But if you've got a money flow a problem, then making a donation can be helpful.
Okay.
So again, it's about that, moving the money flow. The other thing is, you talked about this right before we got, going on this call, about not being attached to the outcome, right? This is one of the big problems when we're feeling stressed about money, is then we get really attached to that outcome, right? We're like, oh, please say yes, right? Because we know that we need to pay the hydro bill. But when you get attached to the outcome like that, then you actually are repelling people, right? People are like, oh, they're really needy. I don't know if they really know what they're doing, and right. So you really, even though you're feeling stressed, you still need to stay not unattached to the outcome, as far as what's in it for you.
So you gotta, then you almost have to have a trust mindset that yeah, you might not get that deal, but the next one coming along is going to be as good, if not better, right?
My friend calls it joyful expectation.
Okay, I like that. I like joyful.
Yeah, I do too. And it's a good reminder when I'm not feeling it. I'm like, right, joyful expectation. Okay.
Yeah, because, sometimes when you're not getting the deals, they're not coming in, and maybe you are on top of your bills and you're paying things. Those old stories and the doubts and the fears really come into to trip us up and haunt us.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And that's not a nice place to be.
Mm-mm.
So
one of the things that, and again, this was a piece of advice that one of my first business coaches gave me, and it was such a good piece of advice. When you're stuck, when you're feeling in that negative stuck place and the stories are coming up, move into service. So who can you help? And, is there a client that you haven't talked to for a while? Call them and see if you can give them a 10-minute, little boost. Can you, contact a colleague that, maybe could use a little help? Could you, if you move into service, then, because when we get stuck in the story that's a very actually insular thing, right? We're actually very focused on us because we get into our story and our fears and blah, blah, blah into the story, into the spin. And so he said to me, when you get there, that's actually a fairly arrogant place to be, which irritated me to no end because he was absolutely right. and he said, that's when you want to move into service. How can you help someone else?
Yeah, beautiful. Or just get into action. I had a colleague who said, yeah, for the next month, I'm making 9 calls a day.
Yeah.
Not even to sell, just to say hi and see what would happen.
Yep, exactly. That's great.
So,
and ask for help. That's the other big one. Just ask somebody to give you some support, hold you accountable, whatever it is that you need to get you moving again.
Yeah. I'm going to do some rapid fire questions, okay?
Awesome. Go for it.
These are good strategies that we're going to ask for. So let's explore some of these untruths about money, Karen. What are some of them? What are 2 to 3 untruths about money that we need to sort of like break through on?
Okay, cool. So one of them is that we pay for things with money. And I talked a little bit about this before. We actually pay for things with time, money, and energy. And specifically as business owners, we forget that our time has a financial value. So watch how much you're giving away when you should be charging.
Okay.
Second one is pay yourself first is an untruth.
Okay.
That we talked about this when I saw you a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Pay yourself first is an untruth that came out of the investment world, and business owners took it on as if that was the way things were. The reality is it should be pay yourself next. There's 3 things you have to pay before that. Marketing. Got to put money towards marketing so you can get more clients. Got to pay your taxes, and you've got to pay your employees.
Yeah.
Then you can start to pay yourself.
Right. Okay, and a third?
Third one off the top of my head. One of the ones that I find really frustrating is, when we talked about it before, is the idea of I deserve it.
Right.
Because the reality is, if you look at what you want versus what your emotion is saying in the moment, what you deserve is actually something different. So to go from I deserve it, I need this thing right this moment, to I deserve more, and I don't mean more in that other context that we talked about, but I deserve more than what I'm giving myself right now.
Yeah.
And so how can I match my money to my goals and my values in a different way? So watch for those.
Okay. A financial plan, not a bad idea, is it?
Nope.
Okay.
Great idea.
All right. If we're self-employed, how do we manage the uncertainty from month to month or season to season?
All right. So a couple of things you can do. One is to start to plan out on a longer timeline. We tend to plan to the end of the week, maybe the end of the month. And just like in our personal life, we have expenses that come up during the year that aren't every month. And so we get broadsided by the insurance bill that's due or a marketing payment that needs to be made. And so then we end up not being able to pay ourselves. So to smooth out your revenue, there's a bunch of stuff you can do, of course, to smooth out your revenue. But if you change your timeline that you're planning on, then you can start to build a buffer so you can create some consistency for yourself. That's really critical.
Okay, I like that. Some strategies for those of us who are differing in age and sex. What do younger couples on the call need to be doing financially?
They want to start to invest early. There's a huge, huge benefit. Their expenses are lower, and they really are in a place where if they put a small amount of money away very young and left it, then they're going to be so much more financially better off as as their older years come up. Huge, huge benefit. Now watch out for taking on too much debt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Good idea. Women versus men. And they say that women control like 85, 90% of the world's wealth. So, what should women be doing versus men?
Sure. There's a couple of things. One is, despite the fact that women are controlling the money, they are often not very well versed in any sort of investment, retirement planning, anything like that. And so get yourself educated, learn a little bit about it, get some advice, find a financial planner that can teach you, that doesn't make you feel foolish. There's lots of them out there. And because the reality is you're probably going to live longer and you're probably going to live alone at some point, not to be a total drag, but unfortunately the men tend to die earlier, and so you're going to be alone at some point and you want to have money because it stinks to get to that age and not have any money to support yourself.
And what about the young person graduating from school with big debt load?
You know what? This is two things. Create a plan so that you don't have to get sucked into the credit world, and look at how you can leverage the benefits that are being offered by your employer. There's really good benefits there, and you want to take advantage of them. There's free money, so take advantage of it.
All right, I love it. I love free money. And what about us baby boomers? They've been hit hard by that last recession and job loss, according to a lot of stats.
Mm-hmm. So baby boomers have always had a fairly entitled idea of the way the world works.
We deserve it.
That's right. So it may be time.
That's what our parents said.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
It may be time to do a reevaluation of, what lifestyle do you want and what are you willing to do to have it? And so are you going to work longer? Are you going to choose to have less? Are you going to change how you're going to live? And then also leverage what you know. You've been around for a while. You know a lot of stuff. How can you leverage that to continue to earn an income without having to make, the massive time and energy investments that the young people do as they're building?
And last little rapid fire question. How about those baby boomers who have the bumper sticker on the back of their expensive car that says, "I'm spending my kids' inheritance"? I know it's unjust, but is it?
Well, it is and it isn't. And I think that I think everybody has a different idea of what they should be doing for their children. I always suggest to people that they really take a look at what's important for them as far as their living legacy and their legacy once they're gone, and make some decisions. And if it's important to you to leave money for your kids, because the reality is leaving money for your kids is a gift. It's not an expectation. And so if your kids are expecting it, then they should go and create their own personal wealth. And if you're choosing to leave a gift, then look at how you can do it in a way that can leverage what you have. There's some really great ways to do it through insurance, through estate planning, and if you're going to spend your inheritance, make sure you don't spend it before you die.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be old and not have the money.
Yeah, no kidding. I wanted to talk about debt and all that, but we're really out of time. But any last thought about, debt, good debt?
I threw a few things in there as we went.
Yeah, I know. I think we got it. I think we got a lot tonight. And what do you have on the go? What's your big special offer? How do we book you?
Awesome. So if this is resonating with you and you're like, okay, I have some things that I want to start to look at.
And it's been a quiet room because a lot of people are, they're mum on their money issues, aren't they?
Well, exactly. And, people don't want to out themselves as having, actually having any questions.
Yeah.
And, that's okay because, it does tend to be more of a one-on-one conversation.
Well, I heard that as Canadians, we're more apt to plan our holidays than we are to plan our finances.
Yeah, no kidding. And that's so true.
Yeah.
So I invite you, listeners, to actually have a conversation. So go and have a conversation with your partner. Contact me and have a conversation. So I'm always happy to start a conversation with you and find out where you're at and what you need, and to see if I can be of service. So to do that, go to KarenCollicott.com/money coaching, and there's a little application there, and you can actually apply to have some one-on-one time with me, and there's no charge for that.
Oh my God, really?
Yep.
You're offering that tonight?
I am offering that tonight. I want to make sure that people have the opportunity to actually talk to me and find out about their own situation and how I can help.
That's amazing. Thank you for that. Seriously, that's huge.
So you're welcome.
And they get you at KarenCollicott.com/ /welcome?
Money Coach.
Oh,
Money Coaching.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's the application. Of course, you can go to my regular website. So my regular website is KarenKollicott.com. To get to that actual application, that was hard.
Yeah.
You can go /money coaching or go to the contact page.
I love it.
You'll find me there.
Thank
I have
you.
one more thing. I have
Yeah.
one more gift
Yeah?
because I want
Wow.
to make sure everybody gets something that's right for them.
Okay.
And you can take both if you want. So the second thing is I want to gift everybody with access to my special report. It's called The 1% Secret, What 99% of Entrepreneurs Don't Know About Why Their Business Isn't Working.
Oh, right. Okay. Beautiful.
Okay? And it's at The 1% Secret, all written out, all letters. The1percentsecret.com. And I know you're going to send an email out tomorrow with the links, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you for this. Wow.
You're so welcome.
You're a joy, really. We have our next week. We have our series continues. Our webinar series continues. It actually goes through now till November, Karen. We're taking the week of Thanksgiving off, but next week we're talking about the taking care of part in the SWIFT plan, and that's health and fitness with fitness expert Libby Norris. She's on Canada AM. I don't know if you know that. And diet expert Lisa Berry. So there's do you see them, Libby and
Yeah.
and Lisa?
They're gorgeous.
Yeah, they're not bad. And
No.
yeah, and that kind of wraps up our session. Anything else then, or I think we're complete.
You know what? Thank you so much for having me, David. It was an absolute pleasure, and clearly I can talk about this for 3 days straight. So.
I think we're going to have to do something together very soon. I am going to be doing a live Create Your Vision workshop, so I'd love to have you come in and talk about the money part.
Wonderful.
So
I'll look forward to it, and I'll look forward to talking again with you listeners out there.
You got it. Thank you, everybody, for being on the call. I'm going to stop the recording.